Hello. So I have probably one of the best jobs imaginable. I make pie for a living, which means that I basically get to make people happy as my job. I only just started my business in the fall, and it has been amazing and exhausting, but mostly just really, really fun. But I should tell you, I am not here to talk about pie today. Very sorry. I'm actually here to talk about something that has been at the center of so much of the work I've done over the past few years, and that's our food system. Food systems is really just a fancy word for sort of where our food comes from, how it gets to us, where it's sold, how much we're paying for it, and who has access to it. When I started working on this tech, I was going to say something along the lines of, our food system is broken, it's kind of an uphill battle, there's not a whole lot we can do about it, and we are all basically screwed. Since then, I swear I have found a slightly more optimistic message to impart on you all. I'm going to break out my notes, because we're not doing slides right now. So the first slide I was going to show, and it was the only one that had any real relevance to my talk, so I'm just going to explain it to you. It's an image that was taken at the New York City location of Edible Schoolyard. That's a nonprofit that was started by Alice Waters, and it's to educate urban youth about food. And the image said in Spanish, and so now I don't even have to pretend I can speak Spanish, it said, "Eating well is a right, not a privilege." And I can see that some of you guys here are nodding in agreement, like, yeah, we should all be able to eat good food. And I appreciate that. I think that 5 or 10 years ago, there wouldn't be that same response in the audience. So I think we are seeing a real renaissance in food right now. Consumers are aware of what food's made of, where it's coming from. They're asking about how it's grown, and we really are starting to get to know about the harmful effects of synthetic pesticides. So, words like sustainable and local and organic, they're all being used. And last year, people bought $39.1 billion worth of organic products. So what I really like in all of this is that people are asking where their food comes from. And restaurants and farmers and grocery stores, they're all responding to this. And there's a big movement towards transparency. And I say, yes, that's exactly what should be happening. It's awesome. So what I want to talk a little bit about is what it looks like from the other side, from the producer side. I've been working in the food industry, I've worked with farmers, and as a result, there are 3 things that are just really important to me. I'll say, they're idealistic. I think they're more standards to try to achieve. The first is quality of food. I believe that quality of the ingredients you use has a direct effect on the quality of your products. And for me, my products are my livelihood, so I'm not really trying to cut corners. I want to make sure I'm using fresh produce and that I have relationships with the people growing my food because I want that level of transparency. When somebody asks me why I'm using a particular ingredient, I want to be able to explain why I made that decision, why am I using local dairy, and also that I know the person who grew my sweet potatoes. The second thing that's important to me is pay. I am a firm believer in paying a living wage, and that our current minimum wage is not a living wage. Seriously. If I can't pay my employees enough that they can afford basic living expenses, I don't really feel good about being in business. I think we need to build businesses around paying a living wage. And I think that extends further in that the products that I buy I want to make sure I'm paying a fair price for those so that those people can pay themselves and their employees. The third thing that is really important to me is accessibility. Going back to that sign I was talking about, I don't think that good food should be a privilege. I don't think that organic food should only be available to those with a certain income level. And I really think that people of all backgrounds should have a connection to our local food movement. But most importantly, when I open my shop eventually, I want everybody to be able to come in and get a slice of pie. So I think that despite the progress we've been making over the last few years in food, there's a huge portion of our population that's being left behind. And I think that in the same way that we need to start addressing, paying people a living wage, I think we also need to start addressing accessibility to food. But here's the catch. You can't really have all three of these things at once. I can pay for good quality ingredients, and I can make my food available affordably, but I probably won't be able to pay my employees very much. And if I pay my employees a living wage and I sell food at a cheap price, I'm probably not going to be able to buy quality ingredients. You can do two of these things really well, but you can't do all three. So this brings me back to something I said earlier, which is that our food system is broken. When I say that, what I'm really referring to is artificially low food prices. And I'm going to preface this by saying that this is a super complex issue, and the way I'm going to present it today is like the 2-minute TED Talk version. With the industrialization of food and refrigeration and refrigerated transportation, food started to sort of move away from being local and, made in local kitchens, grown on local farms. And we actually started to get stuff from other places. Things that weren't in season were suddenly available year-round. And I think this was probably pretty cool. Things that were once a delicacy were suddenly pretty cheap. And as we started to get things from other parts of the world, we started to use labor from other parts of the world. This drove prices down, and food became readily available for very, very cheap. And local farms have been competing with those prices ever since. This is why you hear about our food being grown and produced by undocumented workers. It's cheap, it's unregulated, and it's an easy way to cut costs. And those guys are floating our food system right now. Consumers are used to these prices sort of being the norm. In America, we only spend 6% of our income on average on food. And that is the lowest of any nation. The next being the UK that spends 9%, and then next from there, you have France at 14%. So with that consumer expectation of artificially low food prices, prices that don't reflect the actual cost of producing food, it has become really hard for small farmers to make ends meet. There's a recent article called Quitting Season, written by Debbie Weingarten, where she sort of talks about this issue. And one of the farmers featured was talking about, they were raising animals and selling them, and sort of realized that at the very best, they were making a little bit of money on direct sales at farmers markets, but like in all other situations, we're actually losing money on every animal they raised. So they raised their prices and lost all their customers and ended up having to shut down their farm. So on the consumer side of things, this means that quality, real local food costs a lot of money. And it also means that while we are moving towards transparency and using less pesticides and purchasing locally, these options are not available to a large portion of the population. I'm not the first person to point this out, and I don't claim to have the answers. But there are a few people who have tried to tackle this, and a few examples come to mind. There is a pay-what-you-can model, which gives a suggested price for a product, and consumers can choose to pay less or more depending on whether they can afford it. The idea being that it'll all sort of balance out. Another idea is a community fund, which is or pay it forward model, where a customer purchases something and they leave a little donation, and then somebody who can't afford the product can come and purchase it without having to worry about it. Another example is subsidization. So when I worked at the farmers market, one of my passion projects was putting in place a system so that we could accept SNAP EBT, otherwise known as food stamps. A lot of other farmers markets take that a step further and offer to match dollars. So if somebody pulls out $10 from their EBT account, the market will match through donated funds, and suddenly that turns into $20 to spend at the market, which is great for low-income consumers and great for farmers. But sort of a trend in all of these creative solutions is they're all charity-based. As a business owner, that accessibility piece is something that I am trying really hard to tackle as I build plans for my future shop. I live in a neighborhood with a large population of low-income residents. This neighborhood has seen a lot of change in the last few years, and through efforts from the city and through neighborhood associations and community groups, there has been some positive change. There's also been initial waves of gentrification. Gentrification is a super hot topic right now, and I don't know that I believe that you can necessarily stop gentrification in its tracks, but I think you can minimize its negative effects. My hope is to open a business that will serve all members of my community, and from various income levels, backgrounds. I just want to make a space where my neighbors can sit and hang out. I'm not here to tell you I have found the answer to these questions, and when I look at those three things, quality, pay, accessibility, what I've found is that it's really just a balancing act. I expect that every day I'm going to be looking at how my money as a business owner can make the most impact. So I'm trying to find creative solutions for how to serve a wide population. I plan to offer items at low ingredient costs with low labor costs so that my neighbors can feel welcome in my shop and feel like there's something they can buy. I've also thought about discount programs for people who walk into my shop, like our walkers live within walking distance. And I've thought about doing a community fund. I'm keeping in mind that to grow my business, I'm gonna have to diversify, and that means I can't just rely on people in my immediate neighborhood, but my city as a whole. And so I'm starting to take on a lot of wholesale accounts and take orders for weddings and events, and just really trying to find a way to exist in that middle space and do all three things at once. But coming back to you all as consumers, what can you do to contribute positively to our food system? I would say that the best thing you can do is to redirect some of your food dollars to our local economy. I think the cost of trying to find a good deal on the goods you buy is something to really think about. Organic products, now that we're spending $39.1 billion a year, they're starting to become more available, but they're also starting to become more affordable. And I think we should ask ourselves why, at what cost? That's why I like the idea of buying locally. When you buy cheap organic products, it's sort of feeding back into that same broken food system. You're just slapping another label on it. Organic. Practices are very important, and I don't want to say, that I don't think it's important to not use pesticides. But when you take local out of the equation, we're not really addressing the root issue. Another thing I would say is when you eat out, instead of eating at a chain, try to make a move to patronize a restaurant that's owned by somebody in your community. Or better yet, try to make a move to patronize a restaurant that is locally owned, that's transparent about what they're doing. Look at whether they're paying a living wage or if they have relationships with local farms. Most small businesses that are doing this are very vocal about doing this, so they're not difficult to find. The other thing I would say is to try to take small steps, just making a small adjustment to the way you spend money on food. I don't think that anybody should go out and try to make a big, life-changing, sweeping, upheaval of their finances. I think, start small. Commit to going to your farmer's market once a month. Right now would be an awesome time because it's winter and the farmers aren't making any money, I can tell you from experience. The other thing would be, maybe pick one product. Say, we're going to only buy local eggs from now on. Just a small change. Find a way to make your money make as much impact as possible. And this is something I try to do as a business owner and a consumer. You really can speak with your dollars. Businesses aren't becoming more transparent and talking about where food comes from because it's the right thing to do. They're doing it because you guys are asking them to. And your money speaks volumes. I think most importantly, it holds businesses of all sizes accountable for their actions. And that's really what's going to change things. So I think those three things, that quality, the pay, the accessibility piece, I think those are all things that you all can contribute to as well. But I think it's a lot of give and take. I think it's a lot of balance. They are very idealistic things. But you should know that your voice matters. And the closer that we look at our food system, the more we demand better practices and more transparency, the closer we're going to get to finding that middle space. Thank you.